Welcome to the School of Self-Brain Surgery. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Warren. It is season 11. We're going to do some self-brain surgery right now. Let's get after it. Good morning, my friend. Welcome back to the School of Self-Brain Surgery. It is the first episode of season 11. We are starting something new today. Today, we are going to get extremely tactical on managing acute anxiety or panic, okay? We're going to do some self-brain surgery operations to move you from victim of these feelings, move you from patient experiencing them to being able to do something tactical to understand the incredible creative power that your mind gives you over the control of your brain and your body and your life. And we're going to get real tactical and move from patient to physician because you are already performing self-brain surgery. That's what you got to believe. You're performing self-brain surgery. You're changing your brain structurally. You're taking control of your own physiology. You're not a victim. You are an operator. We're going to stop contemplating it and start operating it. But before we do that, let me remind you about the newsletter. Every Sunday now, since 2014, I have written a self-brain surgery letter. It goes out to people all over the world, 60 or more countries. It's read in every state in the United States, and it's absolutely free. And we deal with the real business of self-brain surgery. We talk about what's really happening in your mind and in your brain, and the fact that your mind and your brain are separate. We smash faith and neuroscience together. We go deep in understanding how fearfully and wonderfully we're made, and we move you from victim to operator, from patient to physician, from computer to programmer. We change your mind and help you change your life, and it's absolutely free, and you can get it at drleewarren.substack.com, drleewarren.substack.com. All you need to do is put your email address in there and you will get the newsletter. It's important because it's a community, okay? It's connected to the prayer wall. It's connected to people all over the world who want to help each other do this business of becoming self-brain surgeons, to become healthier and feel better and be happier, and all the stuff that we talk about, the power of starting today, and the stuff that we talk about every week on the podcast. We go a little bit deeper on the newsletter, drleewarren.substack.com. As we get into season 11, one thing I want you to notice about the podcast is that we're going to be moving from theoretical mindset stuff into very tactical operations, the things that we are going to do to make our lives become healthier, feel better, and be happier. We're going to start talking specifically about here's what you do. Okay, we're doing this as I write the Handbook of Self-Brain Surgery, the book that's going to be hopefully coming out sometime next year, that is going to be your guide, your handbook, your field manual for what you do when you feel certain things, when you experience certain things. What do you do? So we're going to start operating, okay? If you just came to my office, and this happens every week, somebody comes to my office with back pain or neck pain or something going on, they're having a hard time, and they want me to write them a prescription. They just want a medicine. They just want a pill to take to stop hurting so they can go back to work. They don't have time to have surgery and take time off. They don't have time for physical therapy. They think all they need is a pill. And if that's what I did as a surgeon, if I just wrote you a prescription and sent you on your merry way, that would be bad practice. And what if I also, instead of writing a prescription, what if I just gave you a good pep talk and tried to inspire you and fill you with positivity and set your mindset right? Like, would that be good practice? No, you've got a brain tumor or a ruptured disc or a foot drop or something. You need me to help you fix it. You need me to stop contemplating, stop talking about it, stop giving you ideas, and stop trying to pump you up with positivity and start doing something. Pick up the scalpel and get after it. There's a time when it's time to take action. Okay, today's that time for you. We're going to talk specifically today about anxiety and even panic. Now, I want to always give you a disclaimer, okay? If we are talking about something that you can't control, if you try these self-brain surgery ideas and you can't get something under control, if you're feeling depressed or suicidal especially, or you're feeling excessively anxious, if you can't get your job done, you can't get your work done, it's interfering with your relationships, go see a doctor, okay? First and foremost, mental things can sometimes and frequently are medical things. Make sure your thyroid's okay. Make sure your hormonal status is okay. Make sure your nutrition's good. Make sure you're sleeping okay. Make sure you don't have something else in your way, like alcohol or a drug addiction or something else happening. Go see your doctor, okay? And sometimes you need a mental health professional. Sometimes you need a therapist to work through some things, some traumas or tragedies or massive things that have happened. Sometimes it can be a pastor, it can be a chaplain, it can be a trusted friend or a colleague. But don't do this practice alone, okay? And if you're having trouble, if these ideas that I give you on this podcast aren't enough, You need professional help. Go see a doctor. So remember that this idea, this self-brain surgery idea, is never intended to replace the professional advice of a doctor, counselor, psychiatrist, therapist, any of that, okay? My point with self-brain surgery, it's not therapy. It's a set of tools that you can use in your own life, because the truth is, as Anne Lamott says, there's almost nothing outside of you that can help in any meaningful way unless you're waiting for a donor organ, okay? You've got to make the changes yourself. Nobody else can do it for you. So whatever you learn from your therapist, your doctor, whatever vitamin you're deficient in, or your thyroid's out of control and you got to fix that, you still won't change or get better in between your ears and on the ground in your life until you decide to make some changes, okay? I can perform the perfect operation. I can give you the perfect plan, but if you don't come and actually have the surgery, you're not going to get better. I can write you the prescription that will get rid of your infection, but if you don't take the pills, you won't get better. So self-brain surgery is your side of the equation to learn that you have tremendous power to do something about what's happening in your own life. You are not purposeless. You are not powerless. You're not a failure. You're not stuck. You can do something about it. So today is about that thing that we need to do specifically when we're dealing with anxiety, okay? Now let's talk about quantum physics for a second. I am not a quantum physicist, okay? I'm a nerdy, left-handed kid from Oklahoma, and I'm not trained in quantum physics, but I have been, for the last 2 years, extensively reading on the difference between the mind and the brain. And everything comes back to physics, okay? Like all roads in neuroscience, all roads in every science really lead to physics. It turns out that physics is the ground level explanatory system for what is happening in the universe, including in between your ears, including in the mechanics of your brain. We talked a lot about quantum physics in season 10, so you can go back and hear all those episodes. We don't need to cover that ground again here. But here's the thing that I want you to keep top of mind as we get into the tactics of what to do when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling panic, when you're having trouble controlling your train of thought. Here's what I want you to know. Attention matters. This is what all the psychology studies are finally starting to show. We raised a generation of young people, in the West especially, to think about their feelings all the time. We often, the first question we ask, how are you feeling? We take them to therapists for checkups, for preventative therapy, all focused on the idea of thinking about their feelings. And then what we've learned is nobody's getting happier. Everybody's getting more anxious. Everybody's taking more medication. The demand for therapy is going up. Why? Well, I would suggest it goes back to physics. The way that quantum physics works is that attention matters. It matters when you're paying attention to symptoms, and it matters when you're observing experiments. What the quantum physicists of the 20th century, Heisenberg and his crew, figured out is that your mental force, the energy that you apply with your mind, affects the real world outcome of experiments that you perform. Okay, that's the lesson from 20th century quantum physics. When you look at something in a certain way, you affect the outcome, you affect the reality of that system. Okay. So when you take that into the mental health world, what we learned is the more you pay attention to a feeling or a symptom, the more enlarged, the more real, the more unchangeable that symptom becomes in your life. So if you should read a book called Bad Therapy, by the way. Abigail Schreier wrote this book about the mental health crisis in our young people, why the kids aren't growing up, why they're not launching, why a lot of them don't get their driver's licenses when they turn 18 or 16 anymore. They don't go to college on time. They don't go to job interviews without taking a parent frequently. And it's because they don't know how to get out of thinking about their symptoms. They don't know how to launch into the world and manage things mechanically because they're stuck thinking all the time about how they feel. And we learned that from quantum physics. There's something that we've talked about before called the quantum Zeno effect. It's very clear, very well documented. Numerous studies have reproduced it, and it's definitely true that the more you observe a system, like if you say, I'm going to measure the quantum state of this particle, the more you measure it, it collapses and stays in the state that you're measuring. In other words, the system will not evolve and change when you continue to take pictures of it. And the best analogy I can think of is one of those photographers that has a really high-speed shutter that can take pictures of hummingbirds flying by, and it looks like they're in slow motion. And it's not a magic trick. They're not really in slow motion. But what's happening is that the shutter is snapping so fast that the difference between one picture and the next is infinitesimally small, and it looks basically like the bird is stuck in midair, right? The airplane's not flying because the shutter speed is so fast. That's kind of like what quantum Zeno effect is. The more you look at something, the more you ask the system, is this thing true? The answer always comes back that it is stuck in that state. And that's what happens when you focus on your symptoms. If you think about, I feel anxious. Do I still feel anxious? Why am I feeling anxious? Is there something wrong with me? I must be about to have a heart attack. Why do I feel this way? What's going on? Now my heart's racing. Now I'm sweating. Now my stomach hurts. And you start to sort of live out this observation of the system, and the symptoms magnify and become more and more real because you're playing quantum physics on your own mind. Okay? So there's 3 things that we have to do to understand the power of directed mental force in our life, for our ill or for our good. Quantum Zeno, the more you look at something, the more stuck it stays. The attention density, so the more of your own mental force that you apply to focusing on a thing, the more likely that thing is to stay the way it is or to become larger, okay? In the newsletter yesterday, we talked about the reticular activating system. And in the podcast the other day, we talked about the reticular activating system, this system of neurons in your brain, in your brainstem particularly, that serve as kind of a filter, okay? If you tell your brain that you're anxious, I have anxiety disorder, I am anxious, I'm going to be anxious, my anxiety makes me have to do this, my anxiety controls me in this way, then your brainstem will start saying, okay, well, I better look out for all the things that make me anxious then. I'm going to see every clown on the street if you're scared of clowns, or I'm going to see every door that I have my back to that makes me nervous that somebody's going to come through and hurt me in some way. I'm going to have to get up and check the locks 100 times because I might have left a lock unlocked. Like all that stuff is because reticular activating system is just doing what you're telling it to. You're giving attention density to the idea that something out there is going to hurt you or harm you, or that there's something wrong with you because you're feeling a certain way, okay? And then Hebb's Law is the third piece of it. Hebb's Law is this famous maxim that every neuroscientist who's really a chiropractor on Instagram says, neurons that fire together wire together. Yes, that's true. What does that mean? It means what you're doing, you're getting better at. That's the 10th commandment of self-brain surgery. When you focus on something, when you tell your brain to think about something, when you focus your mental force on something, you give it attention density and bring in the power of quantum Zeno, then you lash that thing together and you automate it so that it becomes more automated and more automatic, and less effort is required to reproduce it. So then basically you'll start finding yourself thinking about or feeling that all the time, because you have taught your brain that that's what it's supposed to pay attention to, okay? So instead, the alternative is let's use the power of quantum Zeno, let's use the power of attention density, let's use the reality of Hebb's Law to say, remember who's in charge here. My mind is a top-down operator with controlling power over my brain that will direct structural changes in my brain when I tell it to. And I don't have to listen to these deceptive brain messages, these little programs that pop into my head and sound like my own thoughts, but they're really just programs that are being run by the brain trying to do its job of automating things so I don't have to spend as much energy to get them accomplished. So if you teach your brain that its job is to feel anxious all the time, you're going to automate that. And those thoughts are going to pop into your head that says, oh, I'm supposed to feel anxious right now. And you're going to give consent to that and run that program. And you think it's your own thought that's happening. But so let's flip it on its head. Let's remember, if you're stuck, use this operation in real time to handle anxiety or panic, okay? You're going to show your brain who's boss, because we're going to harness the power of the 10th commandment of self-brain surgery. What you're doing, you're getting better at. And we're going to harness the reality of the second commandment of self-brain surgery. Feelings aren't facts, they are chemical events in my brain. So I'm going to give you one tool. Here's one little operation. Therapists teach this thing called 5-4-3-2-1, okay? 5-4-3-2-1. There's several variants of this, 5-5-5 and 3-3-3 and all these things. But 5-4-3-2-1 I think is a good one. When you feel anxious and you can't stop thinking about it, you can't seem to shake it, when you're having a panic attack, and I've had a couple of those after I got bombed in the war a bunch of times. I've had a couple of flashbacks that involve panic, and there's a way to work yourself out of it, okay? And it doesn't have to involve opening a bottle and taking a pill, or opening a bottle and drinking alcohol. It doesn't have to involve doing some type of numbing behavior, because remember, in self-brain surgery, it's the only type of surgery where anesthesia is a bad thing. We don't want anesthesia anymore. We want to feel it so we can heal it, right? So if you trust me that the physics is on your side, if you trust me that self-brain surgery is real, it's not a motivational technique, it's not a positive thinking technique, it's actually directing the structural changes that are already happening in your brain to instead of happening in an automated way, instead happen in a directed way, a purposeful way. The best-selling Christian book of all time, The Purpose-Filled Life, Rick Warren wrote. I want you to have purpose in the way that you operate your mind and your brain and your body, because that will affect your quantum state, it'll affect your epigenetics, it'll affect your offspring, it'll affect the people around you, it'll affect the whole world, because you're not, remember the 2-patient rule we talked about 2 days ago, you're never operating alone, and you always have more than one patient when you're doing self-brain surgery, because how you change your state is going to affect the state of those around you, okay? So here's this little operation, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's known as a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. Some therapists teach it, and it's kind of a grounding exercise. It's so you can take a set of symptoms that you're feeling, the sweaty palms, the racing heart, the chill running up your spine, the indigestion, the discomfort that you're feeling, the panic, the anxiety, and you can say, wait, I can operate on this set of symptoms, and I can change them by taking command of my own physiology. I can take command of my own brain by directing my mental force in a way that helps me and doesn't hurt me. Here's how we do it. Let's take 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's a coping tool. We're going to get your senses involved, because remember, your brain is connected to your body is connected to your brain and your mind. They all feed back on one another. That's why Lisa and I have started a new company, by the way. This is going to be the kind of brand that all my products and books and all that stuff come under. It's called Brain Mind Life. I just want to remind you that your brain and your mind and your whole life are connected. They feed back on each other. And you add the spirit in there, you add your creator in there, and you get a whole purpose-filled, powerful life. So here it is. We're going to get this brain mind life operating for us instead of against us. Let's say you're having racing thoughts, you're having a panic attack, you're having anxiety that you're having trouble getting under control. Let's do 5 things. First is, let's get your vision involved. This is going to get out of that limbic amygdala fight, flight, freeze thing that you're feeling. It's going to get your optic nerves, your retina, your optic tracts, your occipital lobes to do something, to try to shift some of that mental energy away from those more terror-related responses to something visual that you can start to take control of. I can decide in the moment when I'm feeling stressed, I can decide I want to look at something intentionally. So what are 5 things you can see? What are 5 things you can see? Right here where I'm sitting in my office, I'm looking at the wall, and I can see there's a framed picture that Lisa made of some Tommy Walker lyrics. One of my favorite songs is "These Things Are True of You." In the frame I'm looking at, unshakable, immovable, faithful and true, full of wisdom, strength, and beauty. These things are true of you. That's something I can see. Now, what am I doing? I'm not focusing so much on my symptoms. I'm reading, and I'm thinking about a song, a worship song that gets me in a different state. I'm using my eyes to decide to think about this and not that. I can also see a picture of Jesus. I've got this picture of a pencil drawing of Jesus laughing. My friend Jeff Nelson, Lisa and I's old worship leader, dear friend, gave me a long time ago. And I love that picture of Jesus. It's like he's with the little children, and he's just got his head back and he's laughing. And he's a happy creator God. And I can see a picture of Mitch with his bass guitar, and I can see a picture of Jesus on the wall over there walking away with the wounds in his hand, and I can see a picture of Lisa on the wall that my friend Darren Legallo, whose birthday was yesterday, by the way, shout out to Darren if you're listening, a picture that he painted years ago of Lisa that's one of my favorites. So there's 5 things I can see. I can see the camera and the microphone that I'm going to use in a little while to record a video for the paid subscribers. Now what am I doing? I'm not thinking so much about the symptoms that I'm feeling, because I'm thinking about the things that I can see. I'm choosing to use my mental force to look around the room and see some things that make me feel grateful, that make me feel happy, that remind me that there's good things in my life besides this set of feelings that I'm feeling. So what am I not doing? I'm not ruminating on the anxious feelings anymore. Now I'm looking around the room, taking charge with my eyes. Now, what are 4 things I can touch? Now I'm going to get my sensory system involved, right? I'm feeling panic. My physiology is out of control. And I'm going to reclaim some of that by saying, okay, I'm going to make my sensory nerves and my fingertips feel something that's going to engage the spinothalamic tracts of my spinal cord. It's going to engage a bunch of different parts of my brain that have to process this tactile information that I'm giving it. I'm feeling the cold metal edge or the underside of my desk. I'm feeling the coffee cup in my hand. I'm going to take a sip of coffee and I'm going to feel that warm black silk coffee from Folgers. That's not a paid advertisement. It's just a brand that I drink every morning because I'm boring. Black silk from Folgers. If you're listening, Folgers, you could do a commercial on my podcast. It's okay. I'm taking charge of things I can touch. Okay. I got my fingers on the mouse now, making sure that the cursor is on the position of the screen that I need it to be in. I'm setting my coffee cup down and I'm looking at a coaster that's on the desk, and I can feel that concrete edge of the coaster and the rough texture. My fingers have to process that and think about it, and I'm feeling the zipper on my hoodie that I'm wearing, and I can feel that metal edge there, and the zipper goes up and down. I can feel the vibration there. There's 4 things I can touch. Now what have I done? I've gotten multiple parts of my brain and my spinal cord, my peripheral nerves involved in doing something. Because one of the maxims of neuroscience that started with, the first time I ever heard it was Tony Robbins. If you want to feel better, do better. If you want to feel something, move. You can't keep doing what you're doing if you want to feel something different than you're feeling. If you keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you're getting. So if you're in a panic attack, if you're feeling anxiety and you keep thinking about how you feel, that's going to get bigger and bigger because why? Because of quantum physics, because of attention density, quantum Zeno effect, and Hebb's law. You're getting better at what you're doing, right? So now I've done 5 things I can see and 4 things I can touch. And I'm going to do 3 things I can hear. The first thing I hear is the sound of my own voice coming into my ear from the headphones that I'm wearing. Okay, and I'm processing my voice. Does it sound right? Do I have a terrible hum? Like the other day I released an episode, and people started writing in that there was a terrible background hum. I didn't hear it because I didn't preview that file with headphones on, and it was a frequency I couldn't hear through the headphone speakers unless they were on my ear. So now I'm hearing. I'm engaging my auditory cortex and my cochlea and the bones in my middle ear and the cochlear nerve and all that neuroanatomy going through my brainstem. It's making me engage that mental force of using hearing. And the temporal lobe and the auditory cortex and all that stuff is engaging a different part of my brain and shifting some mental energy away from that amygdala, fight, flight, freeze, panic, fear response. And now I'm doing something with my brain that involves hearing. So I can hear the sound of my own voice. I can hear the air conditioner humming over. I can hear myself tap on the desk. I can hear myself clear my throat like that. Normally I would edit that out, but I did it on purpose that time. I'm engaging a different part of my brain. Now, what's another thing I can do? I can engage my olfactory system, and I can think of 2 things that I can smell, okay? Why smell is so important because the olfactory nerves are the only ones that don't synapse anywhere. They're first-order neurons in your nose that go straight to your brain, straight to olfactory cortex, which is in the basal forebrain, the undersurface of your frontal lobe, okay? The basal forebrain has a bunch of nuclei that are all related to acetylcholine and the chemicals of memory, and they have direct connections to the limbic system. So basically, you're hijacking this panic attack, which is using neuronal activity of limbic system, amygdala, hippocampus, all that stuff. And you're saying, hey, instead of panicking, I want you to do something else. I want you to smell this thing because I got to use the same neurons, the same territory to process this smell that I'm also using to process this panic attack. So I'm going to hold my coffee cup up, take a big deep breath, and I'm going to remember that coffee. That's going to immediately start to trigger some memories, and I'm intentionally hijacking my system here, okay? And neurons in the olfactory cortex have direct connections to retrieve memory. That's why oftentimes when you smell something, you start remembering something else even before you identify what the smell is, okay? You do. You smell peanut butter cookie in the kitchen, and your mind takes you back to when you were 8 years old and your grandmother was baking in the kitchen. Before you even think about what the smell is, you're thinking about your grandma and the fun times you had at her house or whatever that is. Smell triggers something at a deep level because the first order neurons, the neurons in the cells in your nose are connected with axons that have their cell bodies in the olfactory cortex of your brain without any synapses. So immediate connection to your brain with powerful connections to the limbic system so that you are hijacking the territory that's driving your panic attack, and now you're making it think about something else. Okay. Two things you can smell. What are two things you can smell? What are you doing here with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, by the way? It's not a hack. It's not a trick. It's not a magic trick. You are taking command. You are performing self-brain surgery. You are taking a position of power back from a position of weakness. You're not the victim of these panic attacks. They are happening automatically, but you don't have to give them attention density. You don't have to let them play quantum Zeno commando on your brain. You don't have to let them rewire you in accordance to Hebb's law, because you can choose to take over. You can engage the selective attention. You can do 5 things you can see, and 4 things you can touch, and 3 things you can hear, and 2 things you can smell, and now 1 thing you can taste. I'm going to use the coffee as one more example because that's all I got on my desk here. I take a sip of coffee. It's going to sound gross if you're triggered by sounds. I'm sorry, but I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Roll that around in my tongue, and I start to taste different parts of my taste buds on my tongue that are directly connected to different parts of my brain start to tell me things about what that coffee tastes like. It starts to remind me of having a cup of coffee with my dad and having a conversation, having a cup of coffee in a rack, sitting on the roof of a building and looking out into the city and seeing people who wanted to kill me. And I'm thinking things about my deployment, and I'm remembering things about my childhood. I'm remembering a cup of coffee at the bagel shop with Lisa when we were dating, and the morning that I really realized I was falling in love with her was sitting having an everything bagel and a cup of coffee at a place, and I remember that. Okay, so now what am I doing? I am taking charge of my own physiology. I'm taking command of this situation. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm not a patient. I'm not being ravaged by this disease of anxiety or panic. I am now the operator. I've stopped contemplating my symptoms. I've started operating on them. I've picked up the scalpel, and I'm doing something positive on my own behalf. Friend, you don't have to be a victim anymore. You can deploy a tactical solution when you feel panic or anxiety. Now, again, disclaimer, sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes you need help. Sometimes you need somebody to unpack this and go through it with you and all of that. But if the therapist continues to focus you on your feelings, they're not the right therapist for you, okay? A good therapist is going to say, okay, let's get some strategies, some tactics. I'm not so concerned about why you're feeling anxious. I'm more concerned about what to do when you feel anxious, because that'll start to unlock cerebral cortex, bigger parts of your brain that can actually do something about the situation, that can actually objectively assess why you might be feeling anxious. Instead of just focusing on the feelings, you're now going to say, hey, here's a strategy for what I'm going to do when I feel this way. Here's what I'm going to do. If I want to feel better, I'm going to do better. Here's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here's some tactical things I can do. And now I'm going to recognize that feelings aren't facts. Like, here's something from the newsletter yesterday. Talked about the fact that, let's imagine that you're holding a letter in your hand, okay? It's just so important to realize this. You're holding a letter in your hand, and you're reading the letter, and while you're reading the letter, you start to have symptoms that you frequently ascribe to anxiety. What are those symptoms, okay? Well, your heart starts racing. You start sweating a little bit. You start to feel a tingling sensation on the back of your neck. Your skin, your hair cells on your arms stand up. You start to get goose pimples, goose flesh. The breathing shallows and speeds up, and your mouth kind of feels dry. You notice a tightness in your chest. Your stomach feels kind of knotted. Your hands begin to shake a little bit. That's a set of physiological reactions that you've identified with anxiety in the past, haven't you? It kind of feels like a panic attack. But I want you to recognize something. That letter that you just read, maybe it's a certified letter from the IRS that you're getting audited, and you're really anxious about that, and that makes sense. It might be divorce papers that you didn't want to have to sign, but now they're here and you got to deal with it. It might be, on the other hand, a love letter from that person that you were hoping would say yes when you wrote that note that told them how you felt about them. And they said, I love you too. And now you're going to have a relationship. So maybe the letter was a good thing. And what you're feeling is the same set of physiological things that previously you thought were anxiety. Maybe it's a notice that you just won the lottery. Now you've got a multi-millionaire and you can become a paid subscriber to the Dr. Lee Warren podcast now because you can afford it. It's a letter that you've been accepted to law school or medical school or graduate school or whatever. It's a letter from your kids saying they finally want to come home. It's a letter from your estranged daughter that says, hey, I'm sorry. I want you to come meet your granddaughter. I'm sorry we've had this issue. Maybe it's a good thing. But recognize this, okay? Symptoms, physiological things that you felt are the same when you're excited and anticipating something as they are when you're anxious and panicking about something. So what's different? If the symptoms are the same, what's different? It's how you decide to attach meaning. So the difference between anxiety and anticipation and excitement is not that you have a different set of feelings. It's that you have a context in which to put them. It's that you've got a learned behavior and response to a certain set of symptoms. But what I want you to realize is that feelings are not facts. They're chemical events in your brain. What's a fact is how you respond to those feelings. And what happens is we get tricked over time and we start to think that when we feel a certain thing, it means that a certain thing is happening and we need to respond to it in a certain way. And we'll either capitulate and give in to that thing, or we will choose the anesthesia route and numb ourselves to it so we don't feel it anymore. And then we fall into the being victims of the 10th commandment instead of victors with the 10th commandment. And we start recognizing that what I'm doing, I'm getting better at. And I'm getting better at being anxious all the time. We feel a set of things that we've learned to associate with anxiety, and we begin to think about those feelings or symptoms, and we subconsciously associate those with other times that we felt similar things, and that sets up a reverberating and ruminating circuit that reinforces the feelings, and we get better at feeling anxious in similar environments in the future. And then we tend to behave in ways that we've taught ourselves to as we react to those feelings. So we say, well, I can't go there. I'm going to feel anxious if I go there. I can't go to that meeting. I'm going to feel stressed if I do that. I can't attend this event because I'm going to feel stressed there. Or we choose numbing behaviors. So we stop feeling them altogether. And then we pay tomorrow taxes because we didn't love tomorrow more. We're treating a bad feeling with a bad operation. We're just violating commandments all over the place. Okay? We reassign. If you want to do this properly with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or whatever method you want to use, this is what we've done. We've reassigned anxiety from, hey, something's wrong with me, to the truth, which is my body is sending me signals, but I am in charge of how I respond to those signals. That's the starting place, okay? We've moved from contemplating to operating. We're going to go a little bit deeper next week on anxiety, okay? Next week on Mind Change Monday, we'll take it another level deeper. But today I wanted you to get this idea from physics that attention matters and that there is a way to shift that attention on your own behalf to take command of the high ground of your nervous system so that it works for you and not against you. That's how you hijack anxiety and panic when it starts. I hope this has been helpful. I want you not to live at the mercy of your own neurotransmitters. I want you to recognize that what you're doing, you're getting better at, and that you can get better at getting better, okay? Instead of getting better at reacting to how bad you feel. You can reassign anxiety. You can take charge. You can remember that you have top-down control because you are not a victim. You're a victor because you've been promised that you can have the mind of Christ. You can recreate your brain. You can transform your mind and your life by taking command of your thinking. You can learn to biopsy your thoughts and respond to them instead of reacting to them, including feelings of panic or anxiety. That's how, my friend, you change your mind. And that's how you change your life. That's how you become healthier and feel better and be happier. That's how you develop a sense of purpose because you have power. You're not a victim. You're in charge now. You're not a patient. You're a self-brain surgeon. And the good news is you can start today. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, at Dr. Lee Warren on YouTube, on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen. Please subscribe, leave a review, smash the like button, do all that stuff so other people can find out about the show. Also, subscribe to the newsletter, drleewarren.substack.com. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope it was helpful. I hope it will help you change your mind and change your life starting today. I'll see you next week. I'm Dr. Lee Warren. Have a great day.